the FNL Network talk show.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the FNL Network talk show. My name is Diana Jebbia. I'm your host this week. So happy to be joined by three lovely ladies. We have Bettina, Kay, and Eugenia. Hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Thank you so much for joining me. Oh, we have your dog.
Oh, so cute.
What's your dog's name?
His name is Logan, and he loves like very soft blankets. So, he's like such a Hollywood dog. He's not gonna put in the blanket.
Logan's a total mood right now. I'm a little bit jealous of him.
Me too.
Well, we have a lot to dive into today, but first, before we get into all that, I do want to take a second to acknowledge the tragic shooting that happened in Monterey Park, California over the weekend, and just say that our thoughts, everyone here at the FNL Network, it's with the 11 victims' families, and we just send them nothing but love, and hopefully one day this violence stops. All right, so with that being said, why don't we get into our first topic, which is 911 calls. Sorry for the terrible segue, but they've been released. Lisa Marie Presley suffered a cardiac arrest and unfortunately passed away now, I think a week and a half ago. And then Jeremy Renner on New Year's Day had that awful snowplow accident. I think he broke over 30 bones. And both of those 911 calls were released. Now, here's the caveat with 911 calls. They're public record, right? Because you're calling the police of, your local government, and that's public record. But do you think that fact makes it okay for the media to release them and use them in their stories? Do you think it's ethical to use them in news stories or true crime stories? And Kay, let's get your thoughts first.
It just seems very weird to me. I mean, I didn't know that it was public record. I know sometimes we hear them on occasion. I feel like true crime is a little bit different from other, like TMZ or somewhere that sensationalizes and may use it, which I shouldn't even single TMZ out, because I think the regular news can be really sensational as well. But I just think, for me, if it was my family member, would I want the general public chopping up a 911 call on what could possibly be their final moments? It just seems very insensitive to me. There are some things, and I like that you said, is it ethical, right? Because there are some things that are legal, but just that they don't pass the squirm test. They just make you feel, and maybe they don't make everybody feel uncomfortable, and that's why some people do it. But for me, it just gives me a creepy, crawly feeling. It's just like, it may not be illegal, but I don't think it's right, and So I struggle with it. I'm not sure that I need to know exactly what happened in the Jeremy Renner snowplow incident. I'm not sure I need to know or have a right to know about Lisa Marie Presley's last moments if her mother and her children don't want me to know that. I think it's a little different when it comes to true crime, because true crime is usually taking a whole situation and there is, taking the story apart and different pieces of it. And so that's a little bit of a tougher issue, but definitely for news, I just think it's unethical. I do.
I agree with you. And the other point to what you said about someone's last moments, on the other side of it, it could be a spouse or a loved one making that phone call on behalf of the person who's suffering, and you're catching them in their most raw and vulnerable moments. And to expose that just also feels icky as well. Yeah. Eugenia, what do you think?
Okay, well, nothing is new on this side of Hollywood, to be honest with you. I've seen it all. And I think I love this question, by the way. It's amazing. Dives so deep into the psychology of us as humans. We're all scared of death, right? And I think a lot of times we just want to know and control it. And that's why the crime documentaries are #1 on Netflix. If you have a crime documentary, that's a greenlit. And I even remember being in Venice Biennale once, and they released a, plane crashing, and a black box was part of the exhibit, which is extremely shocking. And I personally think it's super unethical. I think it's terrible. I see in entertainment business, people chasing those stories. The more, cruel, violent, the better it sells. And they would call you and ask you, do you know this person? Like, the press would sometimes call and they ask like, oh, this person died. Like, do you know anything about them? Because we can sell it to some news, TMZ or whatever. And I think it is so unethical. Honestly, I wish that, in higher awareness and power, we will change the society and don't feed on that like vampires, because I think that's what's happening. Psychologically, I understand, being scared of that, like standing in that Venice Biennale and listening to, the screams of people in the airplane, that was just terrible. But also, we're fascinated as humans, like taking yourself out of the equation. I see why it is. So I'm interested to analyze. I think it should be taken out. I think ethics should come and morals should come into legality. And I think these two fields need to merge. But that's a question, for society to answer. But for me, it's super unethical. It's super materialistic. It's all about money and what you can get from that. And obviously people get something from, being scared.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about the way society is going and kind of how we just really will look at anything and people don't care. And I know we're going to discuss that more later on in the show. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about that as well. But Tina, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that was well put, everyone, really. To me, it's a very morbid thing to be listening to be interested in, to be thinking about. I think as a society, it would be better if we could be focusing ourselves on more positive things, on things that we can do to change the world, and not be listening to sensationalized information over someone else's pain. I mean, these are horrible, painful moments. If it was fake and it was in a television show or something, sure, like then it's interesting. But to have it's like someone's real last moments crying for help, it's just so awful, and it's not good for anyone's psyche to have to listen to that. So I say it should be illegal, really, in my opinion.
I agree with that. I also want to touch on, Kay brought up a great point about the true crime series. And I think it has to deal with, for me, it would be ethical if it somehow contributes to the story they're trying to tell. And what I mean by that is maybe a description of the crime scene, or if the person making the 911 call ended up being the killer themselves, because you get to analyze what they might have been saying in the moment. Were there any tells on the way they were making that call? And, how someone can be so psychotic as to make a fake 911 call to cover up your own tracks. Like that, I think is really important. There's actually a true story. I don't know if you guys ever watched the show, The Thing About Pam. It's on Peacock.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
Can we just make a plug for that? Like, if
Yeah.
you have not seen that show, girl, I saw the show. It made me listen to the podcast.
Yes.
I was like, this thing is wild.
Oh my God, we're the same person, Kay. Yeah, and Renee Zellweger was just fabulous in that show. But pretty much this woman killed her best friend for insurance money, and it just ended up that the husband got the blame for it, and she was working on blaming the husband, but she ended up killing someone else, and she called 911 to phrase it as like, oh, there was a burglar, like he was going to shoot me, so I shot him. And they obviously played that 911 call on the podcast. And for me, I feel like that's relevant, because that woman's like, well, she deserved it, not to be rude.
No,
Absolutely.
but yeah,
Yeah,
no, you're absolutely
yeah.
right. She
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a European movie which was made for nothing, but it made so much money, but it makes sense because it was so simply shot. And I have to find it the name of it, but it was all about the husband and the wife and the violence, and it was all reversed. So it's very interesting. I agree with you, the storytelling of that, does it teach you something about like the victim and how she can survive and what is the best thing to do? So I think it does depend on the intention.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we all can agree, like, more educational than sensational.
Right. And especially with a lot of those true crimes, if you also can have the person who gave the call, because usually, like, I was watching a true crime doc this weekend, and the lady who the crime happened to, she was telling the story. Sometimes they'll have like the forensic people telling the story, but no, the story was centered on her, and she survived a serial killer. So she was able to tell her story. So in that respect, if she would have given permission, I say if the victim gives permission or the person who gave the call gives permission, then I would be fine with hearing it.
Yeah.
The film is called The Guilty, you guys. It's amazing film. It was done like for nothing, but the content of it is so good. And it's such a fascinating story about 911.
I have to check that out. Yeah. Well, that was a really interesting conversation that, like I mentioned before, kind of relates to the next one we're going to have, because society is a little messed up. Like, there's no denying that. We kind of just touched on that. And I think it's time that we stop criticizing people's bodies, but apparently the world doesn't agree for some reason. I don't know why. But in the past week, 2 celebrities, their bodies have been the subject of news stories. So we had the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Kyle Richards was accused of using the drug Ozempic to lose weight. I think it's a diabetic medication, and it's not FDA approved for weight loss, I don't think, but I think it has that, like, it can be useful for it. And Selena Gomez always criticized about being, quote, too big at the Golden Globes, which is ridiculous because, like, she looked amazing. And the above, or everything I just said, proves that people will find a way to body shame no matter what size you are. If you're too small, people will be like, oh, eat a cheeseburger. And if you put on some weight, people will be like, oh, you have no right going out dressed like that. And it's just, you would think that would stop. We're in 2023 now. The body positive movement has been here like for almost 10 years now. And I feel like it's a shame when stuff like this happens. So why do you think that some people's first instinct is to just shame people or comment on their bodies? Do you think we can ever stop criticizing them as a society? And do you have any ideas on what steps we could take to get to that point? And I'll start with Bettina.
Well, the first step is to just stop talking about that kind of stuff altogether. Why are we still talking about it? That's the first question, right? In my opinion, the people who actually started the idea that we had to be a certain size are people that were selling products. Like, I think they were pharmaceutical people to begin with who came up with the idea of this, like the chart that you have to be a certain weight to be a certain health. I mean, I think that that's how the whole thing started, really, from what I remember reading about. But I mean, I think it's best to have a healthy body and not to be too overweight. But I don't think shaming people for what they're wearing at events is any help with that. Like, I don't think that should be out there at all. People should decide for themselves what's healthy for them and how they want to eat and how they want to exercise, and let it go at that. There shouldn't be so much focus on it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, as a society, we've always been very appearance focused. I grew up in the 90s, and I remember it was all about that like rail thin look, and you had to look a certain way to be a model. And when you grow up with that, it like puts an impression on you. And I was a chubby kid, and I had lost a lot of weight when I was in college. But I just remember growing up in high school and elementary school, like I would get called a whale and stuff. So this topic hits pretty close to home.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're right, Bettina, we have to stop making that the focus of our conversation and just stop talking about it. But, sadly, some people miss the memo on that one.
Look at people, see how beautiful they are, and comment on that, and end of story.
Yeah.
I think Kay is passionate to say something.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, Kay. I wasn't looking.
No,
Sorry.
no. So I 100% get your point, Diana. But Diana,
Hmm.
are you a Housewives watcher?
Yes, I love that.
So you're familiar. So I'm not a full Housewives watcher. I'm not completely familiar with Kyle Richards. I just did a brief, looking view, at her, and
Mhm.
saw that, she got a lot of attention a couple of months ago, I guess, because she had lost a ton of weight, and that she was posting what she hashtag thirst traps of herself in a bikini.
Yeah.
So here's my thing. If you are trading on your body and you're using your body to get attention, you cannot be upset when people have an opinion about your body, right? You're
Mhm.
using your body, which is fine. Look, it's 2023, you're a grown woman, you can do what you want to do, right? But you can't then be upset because people have something to say about your body. You've put your body on display for people to judge.
Yeah.
Is everybody gonna like it? Probably not. Apparently not. Apparently there's a little bit of controversy. Now I know Ozempic we had this huge article in the New York Times because it's really a diabetic medication. And in some areas, it's running low and people are running out of it because it's been found to be effective for weight loss. So a lot of people are mad about that. So I could see her kind of being a lightning rod because people are like, she's taking diabetic people medicine, blah, 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 whatever. So that's a different thing. But the other, like, I feel like there's a couple of things going on here, and I feel differently about Selena Gomez because Selena Gomez is an actress first, right? Like, she has a talent. I don't know what Kyle Richards' talent is.
She's technically an actress too. She's
Oh,
an
okay.
Hollywood team.
Okay. So, but I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? Like Selena Gomez is an actress. Like, she's doing something. She's not necessarily trading on her by herself. So I feel like, and maybe I can't be picky. Maybe if I'm like, you can't talk about anybody's body, I have to be like that about everybody. But I'm not, and I will take the flack for it because I'm going to stand up for Diana and for Selena Gomez. But I'm not going to stand up for Kyle Richards. I'm sorry to say. I know you love Housewives, Diana, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say. But I am not team Kyle Richards. Okay, go.
So thank you. No, that was a lot to feed off of. I do agree that when you put yourself out there, you do have to expect the remarks. Like, I get that. But to me, my point to that more is, okay, but why are we making these remarks? You know what I mean? Like, and again, it's a little bit different with the Ozempic situation, but people just find mean things to say about anything at any given time. Like, this is so ridiculous, but I'm in a Facebook group for home decorating, and people were like copying their decorations in the group and posting them in like shaming groups. Like, yeah, like, how mean is that? How mean is that? And again, they put it out there, so it's fair game for what anyone can do with those pictures, but that's just cruel. You know what I mean?
Cruel. That's real haterific. That's a very hater move to take something that someone shared personally to a closed group. Wow.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
That's a kindness problem that
Amen.
That's a good point.
I really think we do have a kindness problem. And I know Kyle denied the fact that she was on Ozempic. I don't know if she's telling the truth. It's none of my business whether or not she's telling the truth. I get that there's a drug shortage, and I hope to God she's telling the truth. But at the end of the day, what someone does with their body is like not my business, as long as they're not harming themselves or anyone else. And there were two cast members from different shows that literally like were making fun of her on her Instagram. It was like, oh, I guess Ozempic is distributed in, it can be in shot form. And it was like, I'm going to go get a shot. Oh, I mean, work out at the gym. That was what someone said. And then I forgot what the other one was, but it was just as mean. And these are other people on different shows. And I'm like, you guys are public figures and you guys are acting fools right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same, Kay. That was my face too when I saw the comment.
That's very shady. Okay, but Diana, okay, that's super shady. Yeah. But is that any different from, say, a celebrity or a Kardashian that gets her lips done, but then denies that she gets her lips done and is now selling lip products. Like, how much transparency are we is a celebrity, are we expecting from a celebrity? How much transparency are we expecting from a celebrity? I don't know if Kyle is like, I'm working out so hard. You know what I mean? And I don't know if I should expect her to be telling me the truth. Like, she's a celebrity. Like, why would she? But then I feel like if you're when you start to hawk or sell a product, but you obviously haven't used that product, then that's like, you cross the line to me in some ways too.
And she wasn't selling, like, she's not that I know of, she doesn't have any like weight loss products, and she isn't endorsing any specific product as the responsibility for her weight loss. So I feel like if that was the case and she was lying about Ozempic, if she was on it, then that would be a problem, because then it falls under false advertising. And kind of like what I mentioned before, you know, younger minds are watching this and they're going to think they have to get a specific product to look like Kyle. You know, Kylie Jenner, as you mentioned before, did it with a lip line. And, you know, I bought it, but I wasn't hoping, I realistically knew I wasn't going to get those lips with that. I just bought it because it was cute. But I know there were a ton of people, because the Kardashian demo ranges from, I don't know, I want to say like 15 to 50. Like, there are a bunch of teenagers who I know were asking their parents for that lip kit, thinking they were going to have blown up lips like Kylie. There was the shot glass trend. Did you hear about that? Back in the day, it was like 10 years ago. But it's when girls, and namely teenagers, would take a shot glass and like suck on it around their lips to make it look bigger, but they ended up really damaging blood vessels, and like they were coming out with big bruises, but they wanted to look like Kylie Jenner. So that's where I think it's
Ridiculous.
Like, yeah.
You know, there's a song out, I think it's by Jax, called
Victoria's Secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that song. And I think that sums it up. This whole idea came from like guys, like what they wanted to see, and women and magazines, you know, retouching and cutting out women's bodies. And all of a sudden it's like women feel like that's what they have to look like. I mean, that's, you know, really what the whole thing stems like. Without these marketing to us images, we would never feel like we have to look a certain way. It's all stemming from that, like from a, you know, a guy's idea. That's what I love.
I love it. I love it. I was like quiet listening to you guys because it hits so close to home, you know, just starting to model as 13, selling those products, like you said, you know, being in this business of being objectified. I was talking to this producer, lady producer, who has an organization. It's called We Do It Together. So she's not Me Too. She's actually just trying to move society into like a futuristic, more conscious way. And we're talking about art. You know, we had this lunch with the art philanthropist, and we're saying how many artists are there versus like females who are objectified and being the piece of art, you know, and how many women billionaires are there who are self-made comparing to men billionaires. So it's a very interesting social study on that, you know, and I think it's a lot about power, you know. Like as women, we think that our power is in like the way to please men in a way, but I think it's changing, you know, and hopefully it is. But to tell you honestly, like starting to be a model at 13, you try to fit in and you can never fit in everybody's vision. I did have anorexia, you know, every model I had has a eating disorder, no matter what. There's still like still a fear in me, like coming to the stylist and thinking, even for as an actor, you know, it's like, I'm not going to fit like specific looks in Europe because, you know, my proportions are different than whatever Europeans consider to be, you know, perfect for them. So there's still that assumption, okay, like now I'm not 21 and my body is evolved, you know, and like, I'm not going to fit. And I agree with you, like, you're never going to fit no matter what. Like it's, you know, we try so hard, but it's really mental. I think people judge everybody else because they want to be better or control or be in power position. But I think, and it's worse with TikTok. Like I have a daughter, you know, I have a son, and both of them, like, especially growing up in Los Angeles, I think it's a city where everything is based on looks. A lot of it, no matter what you do, who you are. And I think it's very tough on teenagers. Now you're on social media. Of course, there are apps you like edit, Photoshop yourself. I think I'm guilty of that. I Photoshop myself on the beach with the sun. I Photoshopped myself so much. My friends started calling me like, what's wrong with you? Like, I was like, oh my God, I just like, sorry, I couldn't see it. I Photoshopped it too much. I look like I haven't eaten for a year. It was ridiculous. But it's like, I think nothing is real now. It is true, and there's certain people like in advertisement. As a model, I started studying advertisement because I was curious, why do I have to do a certain image for a certain brand, and like, the psychology of it. So I think big lips, they, say one thing psychologically, like long hair says another thing, but they're just wired things. I think it's interesting to learn about them and understand that true beauty is unique. I think that's honestly when I can say personally, I started working as a model when I went to a doctor. I stopped starving myself, even though the joke, I'm so hungry, still sells at the comedy store. I was like, because it's a joke, I'm trying to raise awareness about that, but you have to find your unique way of being. And I think we all appreciate that, as whatever you do in life, whatever you do, you find your unique beauty, and beauty shines. Like, it's authenticity. I think we all relate to authenticity. Okay, you've done some jobs, like I've done some Botox. You can say that makes you, whatever, human and maybe like desperate, but at least say that. I think it's important to have a conversation. It's important to say the truth. If you hide something, and like you guys said, a lot of, celebrities do, it's unfortunate. And I'm sure that, Kyle has a lot of mental problems and struggles, and it's unfortunate that they push you, especially when you're in a reality show and your life is 24/7 on camera, to be under this microscope of like judgment. I think it creates a lot of mental health issues. I think it's important that we teach our kids that uniqueness is the way to go.
Yeah. And Kyle does, like, she's open about it. She grew up in the show business. She's Paris Hilton's aunt. So Kathy Hilton is her half sister, and their mother was like big in the show, like the entertainment industry growing up. And I know she did put pressure on them to work and all that. So I can only imagine what that will do to someone's self-image, kind of growing up with that and growing up in Beverly Hills and now being on a reality show. I think the way that we can overcome this, like, sadly, I don't think we're ever going to be a perfect world where everyone's just friggin' nice. But I do think that we just have to keep putting ourselves out there, kind of like you just said, Eugenia, like, just be your true, authentic self. And, even though people are mean, and yes, it does hurt when they're mean, you can kind of listen to that and feel it, but then choose to be like, okay, I'm me and I'm unique and I know I'm beautiful, and that person clearly has issues. And I think once more people get more comfortable with doing that, I think the criticism will drown out significantly. I don't think it could ever be done because some people are just going to people, but I do think that would help with the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we gravitate towards authenticity at the end. I do truly believe that. Of course, things tell story like, oh, she didn't fit the dress, and like it's all over and I feel better about myself. And, but at the core of who we are, I think we gravitate towards people who really are different and authentic, and they found it, and it takes time, and it's never about judgment of others. It's all like, and you're never gonna fit or be perfect for everybody. Never.
Yeah, that's just human nature. So before, what Bettina was saying about how men kind of put the idea out there about what women should look like and they kind of dictate our image, this next question, this guy, he's one of those men. Andrew Tate, he was recently arrested for alleged sex trafficking. But before that, he was known for spewing misogyny like all over the internet. And there were actually groups of young men who were following in his footsteps. We're lucky to have freedom of speech in America. That's something I don't take lightly and I'm very thankful for. But should we and where do we draw the line before people are harmed? And if you're a woman, which all of us today on the show are, we identify as women, do you feel safe in the world currently? And I just love that we're having this conversation today. I think it really ties into the past two questions we've been asking. And I just like, I feel lucky to be on this panel today with all of you getting your insight on this. So I just wanted to preface with all of that. And Kay, I'll start with you. Oh, I think you're on mute, babe.
Sorry. Yeah, I keep.
There you go.
I don't want any background noise. But yeah, I feel like safe. Do I feel safe as a woman in America? For myself, yes. But I have daughters, and so I have a daughter that just went off to college this year, and she's far away. And so I feel like there's so many things, that I want to teach her to be able to do to protect herself. Watching true crime is not helping. My friend said to me, but true crime can tell you what to do. I'm like, it kind of does, but then it kind of makes you, paranoid about everything. So I was calling her last week because I watched a particular show, and I was like, okay, you need to do this if this ever happens. And I'm going to do these things. And, I think mace is illegal in New York State, which has me really, upset. But I think when it comes to the next generation coming up, I feel like we can protect ourselves, but there's just so much to teach the next generation coming up. And I actually had not heard of Andrew Tate until my daughter told me about him. She was like, oh my gosh, he's the worst. And he was just infuriating to her. Like, I don't know why he made her so upset. It was kind of amusing to me because I was like, have you never heard misogynoir before? Like, what is it? But it was just, I guess, particularly upsetting. Because, like you said, Diana, he has such a following. I think that's what really tipped her off. Because I know in the back of my mind, like, I know there are misogynists out there, and you hear misogynist things and you read things, but to know that someone has a platform and a foaming at the mouth fan base, even if they do live in their mom's basement, is upsetting. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but I just feel like it's really tough. The onus is kind of on us. We have to raise this new generation. I'm doing my part because I have daughters, but I feel like there's a lot to be done if you have sons. I feel like I kind of dodged the bullet because I don't have any sons, but the majority of the work needs to be done with these boys. I was raised with, put your car keys in your knuckles, never let them take you to a second location, throw your keys this way, run the opposite way. Like all of these different, ways to avoid psychotic killers. And, girls are now it's really hard pushed, especially in college, to watch when you're drinking, go out in packs, give consent, that whole thing. But like, what are we teaching these misogynistic boys? Like they have mothers, they have aunts, they have sisters, they have cousins that are women. Like what are we teaching them so that we don't have to do so much defense? Like what are we teaching them on their end? So, I mean, it is really frightening. But I think that's what the work that we need to be doing is teaching them and raising them right. I'm rambling. Diana, am I answering your question?
You 100% are. And you made a great point about, Andrew Tate and his following and how we have to teach kids not to be this way and teach the guys. I think part of the issue with the followers of Andrew Tate, if they're younger, I feel like the parents aren't involved. And maybe that's a lofty assumption to make, but how actively are they checking their social media to see who they're following, what content they're consuming? Because he's not behind a paywall. I feel like that's the only way the parents would find out is, if something shows up on the bill. He's on Twitter. That's free to use. It's easily Googleable. You don't even have to have an account to look at Twitter. I think he had a YouTube channel, but I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. And it's just scary how easily accessible this information can be to little minds. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Don't Worry, Darling. Yeah, but like I don't want to spoil too much, but one of the characters was based off Andrew Tate, and like that movie has its own issues, so I'm going to be real. But this whole that aspect of the movie was very interesting, and like to go off on a slight tangent, I feel like had it had another director, it would have been a much more profound statement, but that's neither here nor there.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just scary because that movie is kind of like the outcome of, God forbid if this stuff gets into the wrong majority and like, God forbid something does happen, what our society could turn out to be. It's very jarring to think of.
Well, it's amazing that people fetishize that, that
Yeah.
film. Like for me, that was so shocking. I didn't like the film. I mean, it did bring a certain reaction, but I agree with you. It could have been done with a better message. And to answer your question, I found out about Andrew Tate through my son, who's 14, and how it leaked into him is TikTok. It's like, and that's the thing, teenagers, you want to be cool, you want to belong to the pack. And you have to like Andrew Tate at like a year ago. And my son, he doesn't belong anywhere, thank God he's become a professional tennis player. So he found kind of an outlet in that, but it's very, very difficult because there's certain trends on TikTok that has a lot of followers. And if you don't agree with the message, nobody cares. You just don't belong. So that's how I tried to explain to him, thank God, it all came out, the FBI. I'm such a huge anti-human trafficking advocate, and it's been nothing but the worst in Los Angeles. I'm working with like Katie Ford, my ex-boss from Ford Models and Freedom for All. We're doing like comedy shows to raise money and raise awareness, but it is huge, and to be honest with you, I'll be completely honest. I don't feel safe at all. Being in Hollywood, Me Too, okay, they started, it had a little bit of, power dynamic shift, but is it still happening on set? Yes. Is it all about power? Yes. So I think I am trying to educate my kids, trying to educate my daughters, but the society is not there yet. To be honest with you, I'm appalled by it. I almost stayed at Jeffrey Epstein apartment because a girl was trying to put me, I was too old for him. And that's a really bad joke. But, just knowing that these people, that he's not the worst and these people exist in power positions. And I think, hopefully I won't be killed after the show, but this is my mission in life. I'm doing entertainment, but I am standing very strong for people who are, not in power and who don't deserve to be abused that way. And anti-human trafficking is a very, very important topic.
Yeah, I agree. And you always do so much for, the community and stuff. So that's something we appreciate here. And I also wanted to ask you if you're okay with answering, because you mentioned your son told you about Andrew Tate, and I don't know how old he is, but he's probably at that impressionable age. What were his thoughts on the topic, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I was driving him from school one day, and he usually, that's how teenagers communicate sometimes in Los Angeles, because they don't communicate. Now they text you from their room. So he was watching this video and he's like, hey, this guy is really funny. And I'm like, who is this guy? And, he told me a little bit, and it literally was a shock to my body. I'm so intuitive. And I was like, something is wrong. Like, this guy is not okay. It's not okay that you laugh at it. And I'm like, why are you doing that? And he's like, well, everybody thinks he's funny, everybody. So it's like, you're part of the pack. And I'm like, this is not okay. These values are not okay. And, I was a minority at that point, and it does take time, village, and effort to pursue them. But, I know that my son is good. Like, thank God he's focused on sport. It's something physical, but it is very hard for this generation not to follow the trends, whatever the trends are on TikTok, whatever they are. My daughter is into like facial masks, and she's 12. I'm like, your face is beautiful. You don't need to do that. You don't need to follow the trend on TikTok where you need to put 50 masks and buy all these products. So I think, it is really about being conscious, I think, and it's not okay. Like, there's a lot of dark things, but I think they will come out on the surface. And that's a good thing about social media, because somehow you're going to track everything. So the polarity has to balance out.
Definitely.
To you, Eugenia. That's awesome. I love that you like that he was comfortable enough to come to you and you were like, no, it's not funny. Like,
No.
yes, I love that.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, he's lucky to have a mom like you, because it goes back to what I was thinking before, where some parents are just absent. And had that been someone else, to an extent, kids don't know how to think about certain things and they don't have life knowledge and perspective. So, in a way, we can't blame them for being influenced. It's up to the parent to step in, which is exactly what you did. So, he's lucky to have you.
I try, being a working mother is not always easy, like being present 100%. There's so much, issues about like, oh, you're a mom and you have to do everything. And I'm sure, mothers can agree too. It's hard as well to always be on top of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, Bettina, so what do you think about this? I know you're probably going to have a lot to say about this.
Well, I mean, this whole thing about TikTok influencing the younger generation just seems so horrible. I mean, there's just so much brainwashing that goes on these days, and particularly it's politicized. The politics and all the horrible people in politics that are influencing everyone is just the worst. I mean, me in my youth, I worked as a stripper in my youth for about 5 years, and I had a horrible traumatic incident in my youth, being raped and drugged, kidnapped. I had a whole like insane story. And I thank God got out of that alive. So I try in my adult life to stay safe and be aware and kind of see what's coming, so I don't do anything stupid. And I try to do things to protect my nieces. Have nieces in their 20s that maybe might not be so aware of what's happening and where they are and what guys might be thinking. It's a scary world, and I wish it would change a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. That's incredibly difficult. And like, we're all glad you're okay and here to spread that awareness.
A long time ago, and it's a whole long story. I could write a book, but that's just a little snippet of just to give an
Yeah.
idea of what I've been through, and then how to get out of it. Being involved in a traumatic situation, you have to heal and try to see the good in people and try to bring that out, and while still being aware that there's crazies out there, and there's just more and more being taught and being born, because our society is not like all on the up and up.
Right. And that's a really like valid threat still in today's society, because I, as a woman, I don't want to say I feel unsafe, but I've been more observant of my behaviors. And I know when I'm on a walk, let's say, and I see a man, he could be like a perfectly well-meaning guy, but like I'll just go to the other side of the street. Or like if I see a car that's like slowing down, I like kind of slow my steps down and like, okay, what's that car doing? Like, I don't know.
Even in the subway is like,
Yeah.
there's horrible things happening.
Yeah. I even, when I go to visit my friends and I can't find a parking spot near their house, I'll have her husband walk me to my car and I'll drive him back to the house.
Yeah.
I'm not a very tall person. I like to say I'm trunk sized, because you could easily scoop me up and shove me in a trunk. So I always am like on the extra lookout for all that. And, even when I would go to a bar, the bar back there was so nice. He's like, if you ever don't feel safe waiting outside for your Uber, like, just come grab me. I'll wait with you and make sure you get in safely. So thankfully there are some good men out there. And I just think
there are very nice, protective men out there that are just wonderful. Yes.
yeah.
And I encounter that every day. So many wonderful men that are just willing to help and go the extra mile. I go to all these gigs. I'm in all these different locations, and I do meet lots and lots of wonderful people that are helpful. Yeah.
And they need to keep just educating that, passing it forward to the next generation. And even if it isn't their child, like let's say someone they come across is like an Andrew Tate follower or whoever, and they see this behavior and how much better it is, maybe they could learn something from them.
Yeah.
All right. So our last question, I'm sorry, this is not like a happy episode at all. We're taking on a lot of heavy topics today. So I hope everyone's doing okay.
Real.
Wellness check for the viewers out there. I hope you're doing good. Last week, a New Mexico prosecutor decided that Alec Baldwin will face criminal charges in the tragic death of Helena Hutchins on the set of Rust. If you need a little memory refresher, he got what he thought was a prop gun that wasn't loaded. She asked him to shoot it for a shot, and unfortunately there were bullets in there and she passed away. So he's going to be facing criminal charges for that. Do you think it's fair that he is? Do you think that there could be something done more on the industry side to keep people safe on set? Do you think maybe the people like on that set in general could have been more responsible when it came to firearm safety? And do you think it's even necessary to use firearms in films anymore? And Eugenia, I know you're an actress and you have a lot of experience on set, so let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I have chills when like literally, you know, I do so many spirals and work with so many stunt guys. And here's my thinking is like, if he was just an actor on set, okay, that's one thing, but he's a freaking producer, you know, take responsibility. If you're a producer, if I produce my projects, when my husband produced his projects, he runs a movie, you know, he's like, you know, you have to take responsibility. You're the one who takes care of everything on set. And, you know, I've done films for much less budget than what this movie was for. And still there was meetings like, you know, there's always a meeting even before this happened, and everybody checks the guns, they show the guns to the actors. Like the prop is never given to you just cold. It's not like, hey, go shoot, you know, there should be people assigned to it. And that's a producer responsibility. It just comes with a job. So I absolutely think he has to take responsibility. It's a cowardly way to run away. You know, criminal system and criminal justice is something else in this country, which I'm learning, you know, it's a separate thing, which makes me so mad. I want to become a lawyer. But, you know, in this specific case, I'm terrified. I work with Taran Tactical, who works with Keanu on all the John Wick films, and we're talking about it. Never, ever, ever should it ever happen, you know? So somebody has to take responsibility. And I think everybody who ever hold that gun that is, you know, is responsible for that. Absolutely. Like, I'm mad. I'm actually really angry talking about it.
Yeah, as you should be, because this, you know, directly affects you and your livelihood. It would be like if I work for the radio, my main job, and like people were just coming in with guns on I'd be freaking out if that was something we had to deal with every day. So I can see how that hit really close to home for you. Yeah,
and just any life, you know, it's so precious, and movies are not that important in somebody's life.
Yes. Do you think, like, since you have more experience, I've just been in background in like some movies, like I don't really have all that much experience, but do you think it's necessary to even use real guns? Or do you think that like with the advancements of technology and making props, do you think it's something that can be done away with?
Well, definitely they're prop guns. They're different guns. They're not the guns where you put bullets in. You know, we like never use guns with bullets. They're just a prototype. So how did even that real gun finished up there? You know, like I never shot a real gun on set, and it's fine if it looks like, but it's plastic or whatever it's made of. Like you can never use it as a weapon.
Yeah. And it's almost like, I don't want to like make light of it, but in horror movies, like you don't see Ghostface running around with a real knife on set. Like all that stuff is, you know, whether it's that material, I don't remember the name of it right now, but it's like a hard rubber that can look like something else. Or and I feel like guns should be treated in the same manner, because, you know, one little oversight like that happened in this situation, we tragically lost someone who did not deserve that at all and had so much more to give to the world.
Stunt is everything. I think stunts are like one of the most important jobs on set, you know, because you literally make people feel safe with their life.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into what you see, you know, the final product. And I feel like sometimes people don't realize that, and it's sad that it took something like this to make people wake up. Bettina, what do you think?
Yeah, I've been on over 100 television and movie sets.
Yeah.
And as Eugenia said, there's a safety meeting that's supposed to happen at the beginning of the day where they discuss very clearly what's going to happen on that set, and they show you the guns. I mean, personally, I don't think there's a need for a gun at all in any place at any time. Why is that even something in existence? Why should we be killing things? Like, I'm really against guns anywhere. And the other thing was, there was many levels of neglect that went on, many levels, from the armorer that was hired and to giving the armorer many way too many things to have to do. She was supposed to be, they told her to kind of don't focus too much on the gun, focus on your props. There was, why were there live guns on set anyway? Do you know that a whole bunch of people walked off that set like a few days before because they were like, this is not a safe set, and they left. Now the producer part, I mean, a producer can be anything. A producer can be someone who just gives money to a show. He's not necessarily the one in charge of that. And I think Alec Baldwin was like in charge of maybe some creative parts. I don't think he had anything to do with the gun. So I don't necessarily think that because he was a producer, that means that he is responsible for it. But as an actor, I would think that he would make someone show him that there's no bullets in that gun before he shot, like just to grab a gun, just to, I know that on certain sets that I've been on, if there's anything dangerous, I'll be shown very specifically what's happening here, um, for each take, for each take. So there were just many levels of neglect on the set. This hasn't happened since I think 30 years. The last time this happened on a set called Crow, I believe,
Yeah.
when somebody died. So it's 30 years, which is a long time, but now it's happened again. And I think people are going to be way more careful, maybe eliminate all guns altogether, which should not have been on that set. I think they were shooting, they were like practicing shooting ranges for whatever reason. And that's why half the crew left. They're like, this is dangerous. So, I mean, I think because of this incident, things are going to be, stepped up a lot. But as for Alec Baldwin, criminal, I don't know. I think he suffered enough. I just don't know if having him face criminal charges is really going to help anything.
Yeah, it's hard to say. This is why I'm not in law enforcement and I'm a host on the FNL Network talk show. Like it's hard to say that like what kind of responsibility he should accept because I know with the law, like intent has nothing to do with it. It's very like black and white. And obviously he didn't go in, it wasn't premeditated. So I guess it would be a lesser charge. It would be I think it's negligent homicide, I think it is. But it's just still an unfortunate situation. I'm sure he feels horrible about it. Some responsibility does need to be taken, but again, I don't enforce the law, so I don't know what responsibility. And of course, at the end of the day, nothing, no monetary value, no sentence is going to make the family of Helena Hutchins feel justified or feel content with the outcome. The only thing that would make them happy would be if she could come back to life, which is just a really unfortunate situation. And this is definitely, I think that this is going to be like a precedent setting case, something that changes, like you said, Bettina, changes the industry. And I think maybe like new laws are going to be made around this. And it's just, again, it's unfortunate that it had to come to this. And it's gonna be make a really big impact on the industry. Yeah. What do you think, Kay?
I mean, I really hope, condolences to Helena Hutchins' family, of course, but I really hope that it does spur some changes. I mean, I feel like everyone that I talk to, that I've heard talk about it, is all saying, why would you have a real gun on set? I've not heard a good explanation for why you would have a real gun on set from a single person. Like, it just is, I mean, I just don't know the reason. That's just the question that I feel like is just, I think that they should just eliminate real guns on set. I just don't even know the reason why you would have one.
I agree with you.
So even like the times that I've worked with a gun on set, it's always a rubber dummy gun, and they never even let you point a rubber gun at someone. You are expressly told. Like I played for like a week, I played a soldier, and I had a holster on my leg and one like here. Look, I don't even know. That's how you know I'm not a gun person, girl. But they were like, you had to check your gun out when you went to the bathroom because they didn't want you just to like put your gun somewhere. And it's a fake rubber gun. And if you had been caught taking it out of the holster, you were in big trouble. Like they would send you home. So the idea that you were like you had a real gun, I don't know, it's just crazy to me. And so hopefully if anything comes out of it, hopefully no one will have real guns on set. That should just be it.
No one should have real guns anywhere.
Out of respect and safety to her, just how about no real guns on set? Because like Bettina said, there were so many outrageous things that we found out afterwards. I know the DA said when they were going through boxes of ammunition that were supposed to be blanks, they found a live. Even afterwards, they found a live round. I was just like, oh, honey. And like Bettina said, they had her doing 2 jobs. The person that they hired before, he quit because he's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do both. I'm not going to be in charge of props and in charge of the gun. Like, So it's just like, it's crazy. It sounds like they spent more on ammunition than they did on the armor. Like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, just all kinds of crazy things that just for regular people, it just sounds insane. And then when I talk to people, like Bettina and Eugenia were saying, who are regularly on set, it seems crazy to them too. So like, where's the sense in it?
You all provided me with a lot of insight because I haven't been on a set that had any guns, and I had no idea that there was that level of safety. Like I just thought it was like, okay, you check it and then good to go. But no, it should have gone through multiple clearances. So I feel like I have not a renewed outlook on it, because at the end of the day, like I generally thought what you guys were saying, but now I guess I have a more detailed outlook on the whole situation. And also it's sad for the armorer too, because I don't know if this was her first movie or if
it was not.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say, if she was relatively inexperienced, I know sometimes when people try to throw more than one job at you, you're like, oh, I'll just take it because I want this credit under my belt. But if that's not the case, then she should have known better.
She was the daughter of a very famous armorer.
That's right.
And so I'm sure she's been on sets trying to learn, but she was way less expensive than a real professional armorer. So I believe it was her first job as an armorer. She should have been an assistant or something. She wasn't ready for this, and then they threw too much at her.
But the guy who like the guy who got the plea deal, who's not going to do any the time, and he gave up told everything he knew. He had worked on a set before where he had been disciplined for safety. So like all you had to do was check some references and find out some stuff that the Hollywood Reporter was able to find out. So you should have been able to find out.
That is wild. When I made it through like almost the last round of casting for a reality show, I had to get background checked. I had to go through a mental evaluation. And this was literally a show where I would go on and my exes would tell me what they thought of me. And like no guns were on that show. So the fact that you have these people handling firearms, and it was like a lackadaisical, from what you're saying, process, like, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, that's not all of that stuff is like, they don't have to follow equal opportunity employment stuff just to hire somebody on a set. It's, oh, I know a guy who does wardrobe. Oh, I know a person who does this, and then they just get hired. There's not necessarily a process. And as far as I kind of am in the Eugenia camp when it comes to Alec Baldwin, who I love and think is a just hilarious comedic actor. I love his comedy stuff. But I just was so disappointed because I feel like Eugenia, like you're a producer, you're a boss, even if you were able over things that were more creative, you had to see how many corners were being cut there. And I mean, I don't necessarily know if he is gonna do jail time. I know I was looking up and it looks like he's facing 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. And so we'll just see with more evidence, right? Because we think we know a lot. I've been reading the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and all the, but like the jury is really going to have all the information, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. But I mean, for me, it's like, is it going to move the needle? Like, Diana, you're more hopeful, right?
I am. And I was going to say, I feel like today's episode, the overall theme has been change. And I really do hope that this is going, like you said, move the needle. I feel like it's a really unfortunate, catalyst to get to that point. But at some point, something's got to give. And how many more accidents do we have to have before people change things? And I think it has to do with not only this, but a lot of stuff in the industry. Like, the industry is a very broken industry, it's very broken in multiple aspects. We have the Me Too movement, which we've spoken about a lot today. Now there's safety too. There's also stuff with, people feeling pressure to get certain jobs, whether it's not Me Too or it's just human ethical rights, like working extra hours or taking on extra responsibilities for little pay. Like, it's very broken. Everyone's ego is big in Hollywood, and something needs to change. Like, I am an Aquarius through and through. I am the humanitarian. And I'm like, all right, if you guys aren't going to change it, it's going to be little 5-foot me on the path to change. And I hope we can get there someday.
I love that. I love your passion. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, before we move on, does anyone have anything else to add? Because I know it's just been a very heavy episode, but a very powerful one. And you guys offered amazing points.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing these topics. I think they're fascinating. And I think we can't move forward without talking about some things that are difficult.
Yeah, you said it. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the FNL Network Talk Show. Thank you for sticking with us through these heavy topics. And I want to thank you ladies. I'm so lucky to be surrounded by such powerful, intelligent women. Kay, Eugenia, Bettina, thank you so much for sharing your amazing viewpoints today and for just, being so authentic and
we're nominated for an award.
Yes, the Taste Awards. So exciting, so proud to just be on this cast. And every time I feel like I do a show with you guys, I walk away learning something new or finding things from a new perspective. So it's super rewarding, and I'm lucky to be here. So thank you guys so much for being here with us today, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.